The way you answer interview questions can make the difference between getting your dream job and not getting your dream job. When you think of interviews, you think about somebody asking you questions and you answering those questions. But simply answering those questions turns you into a regular Joe, another average candidate. Dream jobs require exceptional, not average. In this video, I'll tell you the secrets to crushing your next interview, and it starts with how you answer your questions. I know what you're thinking. Someone asks you a question and you answer it. Why is that so wrong? It's not wrong, but it doesn't give you the most impact. It doesn't give you an edge. Let me give you an example so you'll understand what I'm talking about. But before I do, make sure you click like, share, and subscribe because that interaction helps push this content out to a wider audience. So back to that example. Let's say an interviewer reads your resume and says, I see on your resume that you migrated applications to AWS. Can you talk about that? Most candidates will jump right into the technical details. We snapped an image of the on-prem server, stood up new servers, migrated data, set up auto-scaling groups, DNS, routed traffic, and while that's all correct, it doesn't pack a punch. How much of that did you hear before your eyes glazed over? It's not memorable at all. In those types of situations, use what's called the STAR method. STAR, that stands for situation, task, action, and result. STAR. So if you were to answer that same scenario using the STAR method, it would sound something like this. Okay, I see you migrated an application to AWS. Can you tell me about it? Sure. We had servers that were coming to their end of life. We had to come up with a plan. We could either stand up new servers or migrate to the cloud. We chose AWS since it provided additional benefits, such as load balancing and redundancy. We recreated our web servers in AWS, migrated our data, and as a result, we were able to decommission that old hardware. By leveraging AWS, we saw significant cost savings in our new setup while being able to simplify our disaster recovery process through auto-scaling groups. See how much more impact that has? That answer carries so much more weight than the previous one. It's because the interviewer, or anyone else for that matter, can understand everything that happened, the complete thought process. In the first scenario, while it was technically correct, it left out a lot of the context. It's as if you were speaking to a friend or a colleague instead of an interviewer. The second response laid everything out. Situation: servers were coming to end of life. Task: figure out a viable solution. AWS was determined to be that solution. Action: this is the technical part. This is the work that had to be done. In this case, recreating and migrating data to web services in AWS. Result: this is the benefit realized from the work. There was cost savings and a simpler disaster recovery process. Being able to answer questions in this manner will separate you. And in addition to providing more context to your answer, you've given the interviewer several branches to follow up on. Maybe they're looking for ways to contain costs in the cloud, or maybe they're looking for ways to simplify their DR process. Maybe the interviewer follows up with, tell me more about how you simplified your DR process in AWS. And here we go again. Situation: disaster recovery is always a tedious task that must be performed. Task: figure out a way to leverage modern cloud technologies to ease administrative burden. Action: we understood that we could decompile our web servers into auto-scaling groups. These auto-scaling groups can span several different availability zones. So that means servers in Virginia and others in Ohio. And we could also use multi-AZ databases to give us a hot auto-redundant setup. The result: there's no more manual DR testing. This is a hot auto-redundant setup, which means the site will always be up. This freed our engineers to work on other tasks. Many of our engineers were feeling burnt out from working late nights associated with DR testing. Now those days are over, which greatly improved our morale. Again, in addition to answering using the STAR method, you gave several branches or topics for the interviewer to dive into. Engineers are being burnt out is a common issue. This employer may be facing similar issues. Maybe they say, hey, we're facing some of those same engineer issues with burnout. Perhaps he asks you a follow-up question. See how this works? What you may not realize is that you're providing the interviewer with a complete case. He has the context to completely understand your skill set, but also you're indirectly allowing him to dig into your strengths while also providing solutions to issues they may have. Being competent is important. Proving your competency through answers is important, but providing solutions to problems that they potentially have, That's a game changer. And from an interviewer's point of view, they may try to dig into your answers and poke around to see if you really know what you're talking about. But by providing those branches, the interviewer will dig into your strengths, which allow you to answer confidently. The goal is to give the interviewer every reason to hire you. If you have the skills that they're looking for and you've already solved some of the problems that they may have, why wouldn't they hire you? But you're not done yet. There's another fatal mistake that I see people make. But before I tell you, let me know if you're finding this information useful by smashing that like button. So let's set the stage. You've crushed the interview so far. The interviewer is impressed. Toward the end of the interview, they ask, "Do you have any questions for me?" Have you ever responded with, No, I'm good. I think you've answered all my questions." This is absolutely the wrong answer. This is your time to shine. You have the floor. Ask your questions. Make that lasting impression. Imagine yourself in the position. What does that look like? What are some of the things that could influence you in that position? And if you're still drawing a blank, you can use this one. It's a good one. I can't take credit for it. I didn't think of it, but I did have someone ask me, and I was like, wow, that was a good question. So here goes. If I were in the position, what would success look like in 6 months? What would it look like in a year? I was like, well, we want to accomplish X in 6 months and Y in 12 months. Then the candidate responded with, I think I can accomplish that. I got to tell you, that was pretty powerful. I half expected that he was already on board and we would have those things knocked out in the next 6 months to 12 months. At the end of the day, we want to hire you, but we need to hire the right person. We want to hire that candidate so we can move forward. It doesn't make sense to tie up hours upon hours doing interviews. Give me a reason to select you. And now that you understand what the other side looks like, there's one last thing to remember. They want to hire you as much as you want the job. So don't forget that you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. Pay attention to their answers. Pay attention to how they answer those questions. You can determine a lot through that. And if you leave the interview thinking, is that the place I really want to work for? The answer is probably no. The best scenario is to find that win-win, when the company wants you and when you want to work for that company. This is all applicable real-world information. These are strategies that I've actually used to make my way up the corporate ladder. And if you want additional motivation, watch this video where I talk about my journey from engineer to executive. And if you believe that you have better tips and strategies, leave them in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe because we're on a mission to help as many people as possible.